YouTube channel. This is Desiree Ramosa, and today I am going to give you an introduction to microbiology.
I'm going to begin by giving you an introduction to microbiology and an overview of certain things that we study in the field of microbiology. So microbiology is defined as the study of living things that are too small to be seen without magnification. And the term living is used loosely here because we study both microorganisms or what we call microbes. Microorganism applies that, yes, the organism is alive, and biology is the study of life. But in this area, we also study viruses which are not necessarily considered to be alive, and I'll talk about that in a moment. So typically microorganisms are referred to as germs or viruses, bacteria. So these are the kind of things that we look at, and usually it's seen as in a negative light, but we'll learn that there's lots of different positives behind what microbes can do for us and how we use them. So general characteristics of microorganisms, we have either what are called prokaryotes or eukaryotes. A prokaryote is a lot smaller, and it does not contain membrane-bound organelles. It has no nucleus, it's said to, and there are actually two groups of prokaryotes. There are archaea and bacteria. We'll be talking mostly about bacteria, but I will mention archaea as well. Eukaryotes are a lot larger. They're typically multicellular organisms, and they're not all considered microorganisms where all prokaryotes are. Only some eukaryotes are microorganisms. So if we look at just the general structure of the types of things that we study in microbiology, you can see here's a prokaryote. So it's very simple. You see not very much going on inside, and we'll learn about all the different parts and structures as we go through. And then you see a eukaryote is a lot more advanced. They have all these different organelles that you learn about in Intro to Biology, Golgi apparatus, mitochondria, all that. And then even simpler over here, these are actually examples of viruses that we study. And they, have very, very simple structures to them. So those are the types of organisms that we study. Now, prokaryotes were the first organisms to evolve sometime between 3 and 4 billion years ago, and it was billions of years that they existed until eukaryotes evolved, and then more complex eukaryotes at first. This would be our first very simple eukaryotes. So prokaryotes have been around for a very long time, and that's why there's such a high diversity of these types of organisms. Now, like I said, we also look at viruses. So other than bacteria and eukaryotic microorganisms, we do study viruses. They are considered to be non-cellular and they're parasitic, which means they can't live without a host. And they're not considered to be alive because they don't fulfill the requirements of life. So if we look here, these are examples of different types of viruses. They come in all different shapes and sizes. This is some flu virus. This is actually Ebola. And this is a bacteriophage. It's actually a virus that infects a bacteria. Now, like I said, viruses are not considered to be living organisms. They are very simple structure. They have just a protein coat. Sometimes they have lipids, and inside they have DNA or RNA, some sort of nucleic acid. But they're not allowed to, or they're not able to multiply independently. So that's why they're considered not to be alive. One individual virus we call a virin or a virus particle. So if we look at how all these things, relate, if we remember, we're looking at something underneath a microscope. So you can see that here we have some things that you may have looked at in a microscope if you took a regular biology class or if you took anatomy and physiology. So you can see we've got white blood cell here. That's a common thing that people look at under a microscope, or a red blood cell. And then, comparing an amoeba, these are, single-celled microbial eukaryote or eukaryotic cell parts. And then you can see bacteria are much smaller, range somewhere between 1 and 10 micrometers. And then even viruses are even smaller, they're very, very tiny. So different areas of microbiology have different names. So if you study bacteria, you're a bacteriologist. Algae is another group of eukaryotic microbiology, and studying that is phycology. Studying fungi is mycology. Protozoans and helminths are also considered microorganisms, and typically if people study that, they're considered zoologists because these are animals. And these are protozoologists. And then, again, the study of viruses is virology. So those are just some terms that you should be aware of. Now, microorganisms are found pretty much everywhere on the Earth, and they occur in large numbers in almost every single environment. There are not very many ecosystems or places where microbes do not naturally or are unable to grow on the Earth. So even the most extreme cold, extreme heat, extreme pH conditions, microorganisms are able to survive. And the reason is that microbes are essential in nutrient cycling. So they're very important. And you may, if you compost, this is something that's important in composting, is to sort of keep it aerated. The bacteria actually break down and decompose, whatever you throw in there. And bacteria are able to metabolize nearly anything. So that's why they're so important in ecosystems, is they can break down things, they can break down toxins, and they produce nutrients for plants and things like that. They can be photosynthetic. So they're very, very, very diverse and very essential part of any ecosystem. Now, most microorganisms are free-living. They exist in soil or water samples, but some are considered to be parasitic. Now, specific branches of microbiology, agricultural microbiology, so, looking into the farming and soil microbiology specifically. We use microbes for making food, dairy products, beer, cheese. Microbes are essential in biotechnology, genetic engineering, recombinant DNA technology. So all those are, helpful branches of microbiology. Things that are helpful and useful to us. But then, we look at also the negative aspects of microbes, looking at how they affect public health negatively, epidemiology, looking into the study of infectious diseases, and then immunology, studying how our immune system deals with viruses and microbes and other microorganisms. Now, some more interesting areas or emerging different areas of microbiology that are interesting is geomicrobiology. Geomicrobiology is actually looking into microbes that are found very deep in the earth. They dig down into Earth's crust and they try to find microorganisms that live in these really extreme conditions, or maybe that are there that were deposited there within Earth's history, and sort of study how the evolution of microbes. There is astromicrobiology, which is trying to discover microbes that exist like on Mars or on the moon. And then also marine microbiology. The oceans cover a huge percentage of the Earth, and there are any number of microbes that have not been discovered that exist in the ocean. And this scientist right here, his name is Craig Venter. He spends a lot of time, his company spends time looking for microbes, undiscovered microbes in the ocean that may be useful to us. So like I said, we use microorganisms. They're important for us. We've been using them for thousands of years, making cheeses, using them for antibiotics, baking, brewing. So microorganisms are useful for us in that way. They're also useful in terms of biotech. So we can use them in an industrial setting. So creating genetically modified organisms that can withstand disease or to create new products. Recombinant DNA technology is a huge part of medicine. Being able to grow bacteria in a lab that can produce proteins, that can produce drugs, that can produce hormones, enzymes, insulin. So there's a lot that we can do. And then bioremediation as well. So like I said, bacteria can metabolize almost anything. So that means they can break down toxins and things that are, and pollutants and things that are in the environment. So when there are oil spills, chemical spills, sewage, we can use microbes to clean this up. Actually, after the Gulf oil spill, there's been a lot of studies done about that, and they actually found that they believe that the oil is dissipating at a quicker rate than they had anticipated because of the amount of bioremediation that's being caused naturally by the microbes. So those are all sort of positive things that microbes do for us. And there's more. We'll talk a little bit more about their interaction with the human body. But we typically think about about microorganisms in terms of being germs or pathogens, disease-causing organisms. But as you can see here from this list, this table shows, what are the top causes of death both in the United States and worldwide. And in the United States, we have, only two organisms or two diseases that appear in the top 10 that are actually caused by microorganisms, so influenza and septicemia. Whereas worldwide, there's a little bit higher rate of infection. That just has to do with access to clean water and, medical systems worldwide. They're a little bit more prominent. But again, they're not the major killers worldwide. Heart disease, stroke, sort of genetic and lifestyle sort of diseases are a little bit more prevalent. Now, if we look at the distribution of types of infectious diseases, we see respiratory infections are at the highest rate. AIDS is still very high. Diarrheal diseases, which are usually a result of water, not having clean water. So, these are the most common infectious diseases that are caused by microorganisms worldwide. Now, we also have an increasing number of emerging disease things that are new. AIDS is considered an emerging disease. Anything that is increasing in numbers currently is considered an emerging disease. So like swine flu, SARS, things we've never seen before, but also things that are increasing globally. We've also discovered that there are some infections and some diseases that were caused by microorganisms that we didn't realize. So gastric ulcers, certain cancers like cervical cancer being caused by HPV. They've linked microorganisms to schizophrenia and lots of other diseases. So there's lots of exploration into this. And also, the last thing I'm going to mention in this first part of this lecture is the increase of drug-resistant strains. So there's a lot of, because of the high use of antibiotics, there have been a lot of drug-resistant strains that have come about that are also causing sort of emerging diseases or re-emerging antibiotic-resistant infectious disease. And that would be all for today's vlog, and I hope you enjoy watching. Thank you!